Hello everyone, and welcome back to another R tutorial video. And in this video, we're going to begin our discussion on Tmap, which for those of you who aren't familiar with Tmap is basically a grammar of graphics implementation similar to ggplot that focuses primarily on the creation of maps. And what I want to do in today's video is talk about sort of the first thing that I always do when I do Tmap is I just check my mapping mode. And that'll make a lot more sense here in a second. But what I want to do first is I want to make sure that we have everything in place that we need. And that I do that with these 4 lines of code right here, which if you don't understand what those lines of code are doing, do not worry about it. This is just my preferred way of handling package management. And if you've heard me talk about packages before, you've probably seen me mess around in this packages tab with the install and the checkboxes. And that's perfectly fine. That's one way of doing it. I try to, whenever I'm publishing R code, I try to use this format here. So this is just my package management system. And you'll see here that we have all the packages that we're going to need here. So raster, rgdal, tmap, GIS tools, and SP. So again, raster, rgdal, tmap, GIS tools, and SP. So if you're following along, I would encourage you to pause the video and make sure that you have these installed and that you have access to them. If you want to take a second and copy these 4 lines of code, you certainly can. But again, this is my preferred way of package management. So, getting into Tmap. Again, Tmap is a grammar of graphics implementation, so you're going to see a lot of similarities between the way that we construct Tmap to the way that we constructed ggplot, in the sense that there's going to be multiple different layers, in the sense that we had the ggplot call followed by a geom call, the aesthetics function. You're going to see a lot of similarities in that sort of setup, where we add multiple consecutive layers together. You're going to see some strong similarities between that and Tmap. Now, one of the things that I think makes Tmap so powerful are the mapping modes. And when I say mapping modes, there's really 2 that you need to be concerned with. The first mapping mode lets you create interactive maps, so maps that people can pan around, zoom in, zoom out, click on things, have dynamic pop-ups, right? Now unfortunately that's well outside the scope of this course and this series, but it's important to realize that it is an option and that you need to be aware that it's an option, because if you're not careful with your mapping mode, you may be putting things together and executing them in the interactive mapping mode when you really want to be working in the static mapping mode. So just to sort of call some attention to some things, the first thing is, in this video series, we're going to be working almost exclusively, with a couple of exceptions, with this New Haven dataset. And this New Haven dataset comes from the GIS tools package. And if we run this, you will see that we have a bunch of different spatial points, spatial polygons, a spatial line. So we have the sort of gambit of vector data here. And they're all in the same geographic region, so they overlay with each other, so we can create multiple layers on a map, which is going to come in really handy in later videos. One thing we need to be aware of, though, with the New Haven dataset is that this roads data, or the spatial lines data frame, for some reason when you import it, it doesn't import with a projection. But what you can do is you can simply take the projection from blocks and assign it to roads. This is not normally the way that I would condone projecting. In fact, I would say this is the only time you will ever see me do this, where I literally just copy the projection verbatim. There are far better ways to handle projection. But because roads doesn't have anything, you can't do a traditional projection, so you have to literally set it. So that's all this is doing. So I'm simply setting the roads projection to one of the other data sets. So this is going to be our Tmap. Again, I don't expect you to understand any of this at this particular juncture. Just sort of trust me that this is a Tmap, and we're going to run this. And if we do this, if we do map and we run that, you'll see that we have the gray background and the black lines. The gray background is coming from blocks, and then the black lines are coming from roads. And you'll notice that what we've done is you can't do anything, or I can't click on it, I can't zoom in, I can't zoom out. That's because by default we're working in the static mapping mode. But we can change that. So if we go into tmap underscore mode, you'll see that the contextual pop-up says tmap underscore mode equals, and then C plot or view. So plot and view are the two options. Plot being static, which is the default, and then view being interactive. And so I want to just quickly do mode equals view, run that, and you'll say it says tmap mode set to interactive viewing. So now if I run map again, you'll see that it's going to take a little time to run. And apparently I didn't install a package, so let's go ahead. In this particular case, because it's easier, I'm just going to do it this way. R. So now if I rerun map again, you'll see it's taking a lot longer in this case because it's setting up the interactive map. And you'll see now that if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see now that I have the ability to pan around, I have the ability to zoom in, I have the ability to click, and it gives you all of the data in the data table. Right, so interactive, or the view map mode, can be really useful for visualizing data and exploring data, and it's a great way for making interactive maps. But what I would argue for most applications, when you're doing anything with paper maps or anytime you want to put something in a textbook, you're generally going to want to use mode equals plot, which if we run this, you'll see it says tmap mode set to plotting. And so now we've gone back, and if we run map again, you'll see that it comes up much quicker, and you'll see that we've lost that interactivity. So again, view is if you want interactive, plot is if you want static. And I encourage you to always make sure that the first thing you do when you're working with Tmap is set your map mode, just to make sure that you're not accidentally working in the wrong mode. And then when you go to knit it or run it or do whatever, you might have an issue. So I always encourage you, the first thing you should always do is set your mode. Hopefully that made sense. Just again, quick recap. Mode equals tmap mode lets you set your mode. Mode equals view means that you're going to have an interactive ability. Tmap mode equals plot is going to be for that static map, which you can then put into textbooks and other sort of paper documents. Hopefully that made sense. If any of this was confusing, I encourage you to pause the video, go back and rewatch the parts you're confused about. And as always, please reach out. Thank you.